Say who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the wielding world of Doctor Who collecting. Those who collect all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise and sometimes just plain Doctor Who. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. Collecting Doctor Who is a passion. It is not really a profession. I've been called a professional collector, but I don't really make any money collecting. It's a passion. It's a joy. It's something that makes you happy. If you're trying to do this to make money, all power to you. It's difficult because prices fluctuate. And, I fight hard for reasonable prices for collectibles so people can actually obtain some of these things and be happy with them. And that's just something that has gone with me for the past 41 years and going into my 42nd year. As far as watching the program, I've been watching Doctor Who for 47 years. And so it's really quite, and this long time really makes it that much more enjoyable. It makes it important. It makes it part of every Doctor Who fan's passion for the show, basically. I like to use the word passion. It's really quite a passionate thing. And I get reinvigorated every post Chicago Tardis convention because that's what it's all about. And I had a lot of people come up to me and tell me how wonderful it is to hear this podcast, or how wonderful it is to hear my presentations, or my costume, or anything like that. It's really, and we'll have a full wrap up on Chicago Tardis in a moment. First, I want to wish a happy 38th birthday to the Who Shop in the UK, celebrating all that time. They opened in 1984, which incidentally opened the same year I opened one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago that exclusively served Doctor Who fans, and we called it Bundles from Britain. Later in 1984, I gained a valuable partner. His name is Gene Smith. You might know that name. He is the CEO of Alien Entertainment and the showrunner of Chicago Tardis, so things took off and kept going, and were mentioned in a wonderful book. We actually get what I call the mostly harmless treatment, like in the Hitchhiker's Guide. It's a single mention in a book called Red, White, and Who, The Story of Doctor Who in America. Of course, there's a lot of information in that book. Not a lot of space in the book, as you would know. But we live on page 384, and you can buy this book right from our front page at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. It's a direct link to Amazon. No, it's not an affiliate program. We don't get any money from that. We just want you to have one. Everybody should have a copy of that book on their shelf. I have one within arm's reach of my desk here, and I sometimes refer to it quite a bit. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Network, which is growing leaps and bounds. And you can find some wonderful podcasts at directionpoint.org. And if you happen to be a listener and a Doctor Who podcaster, there is no question that you should join the network because there's no cost, no catches. All that is needed is a 30-second trailer for your partner podcast. So a little bit of work on your part, but that will open the door to more people listening to your podcast. So you can join the ranks of great podcasters like this podcast, Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club, Traveling the Vortex, the Old Doctor Who Show, Time Ram, and Doctor Who Literature. So hopefully I didn't leave anybody out. Speaking of links, of course, every episode I want to include these two links because every collector needs to have these on the top bar of your browser. And that is, first of all, the TARDIS Library at timelash.com. The TARDIS Library is a free place where you can sign up for a free account. No catches there. And you can keep track of your media collection with Doctor Who. It's a great place to create a list of things you want, too, including books, VHS tapes, beta tapes, Laserdiscs, Big Finish recordings, any kind of media. is located there. So unfortunately, not to keep track of your figurines or action figures or things like that. So that's not the place for that, but this is a really good place to start. Now, of course, if you need to do some research on some serious Doctor Who items or even not so serious Doctor Who items, there's a lot of great things out there. You need the complete index of Howe's Transcendental Toy Box, and you can reach that for free at doctorwhotoybox.co.uk, and that is curated by my good friend David J. Howe. And if you know that name, David J. Howe's name appears in a lot of Doctor Who. He's been around for quite some time, actually since the first time I saw his name in print in 1984. He has a vast collection of Doctor Who with a museum that's set to open very soon in his hometown. I hope to visit that one day. Of course, a copy of the Bundles from Britain 1986 catalog is in his collection. So, what a wonderful thing. If you're looking for great Doctor Who items at great prices, then look no further than DoctorWhoStore.com. It's in the name, DoctorWhoStore.com. It's owned by Alien Entertainment, and they are currently running a lot of sales on many various items. And if you happen to live in the Chicago suburbs, or at least the north and west suburbs, you can choose free pickup from store. And their wonderful store in Lombard, and now opening in Logan Square. So for your Chicago people, it's a little bit easier to get to Alien Entertainment. So you can find out more at alienentertainment.com for store locations and hours. And, I hope you visit. It's a wonderful place. And you can find great Doctor Who items at Forbidden Planet, one of our sponsors. Just visit our website and select Doctor Who merchandise links. And don't forget our own eBay store. We have lots of Target books and hardcovers and other items of value that we use the money there to pay our bills at the podcast. So take a look there, especially with the Christmas season upon us. In addition to all of our podcasts posted on our website, we have the complete guide to Doctor Who classic hardcover books. And of course, we do our series as part of this podcast, our series of coverage on those classic hardcovers and what they're worth and where they came from and a little story about each one. So just tune into that. We'll have our classic 1981 episode sometime in the new year. We list a lot of reprints that some people didn't even know existed, and I recently ran across a person who had another copy of the elusive third printing of Loch Ness Monster. So apparently that one got a lot of circulation, which is really interesting. Chicago Tardis 22 is now in the rearview mirror as of a week ago, and we're looking forward to the 60th anniversary celebration of Chicago Tardis 2023. I will be back at that conference, probably presenting many different things. Let me wrap up 2022. So what a great convention. It was a great weekend. For starters, I was wearing my Fifth Doctor costume, so got a lot of attention there. A lot of people stopped for photographs and wanted to ask about it and that kind of thing. I participated in the Chicago Tardis Masquerade as just not to compete, but just to be on stage and have a little fun. And you can see some of those pictures on the Facebook feeds of Chicago Tardis. And you can also see them on my own page at DoctorWhoCollectors.com or Instagram at DoctorWhoCollectors. So you can check that out. Got to talk to a lot of different Doctor Who people, including some Big Finish actors. Had some one-on-one time with Stephen Noonan, who's the first Doctor with Big Finish. He has agreed to be on the podcast. Had a wonderful, wonderful conversation with Daisy Ashford, and she is an amazing, amazing voice, an amazing person. I really felt drawn to her. She was really quite nice. And she, of course, has two Doctor Who star parents. Her mother being the late Carolyn John, and her father, Geoffrey Beavers, the dilapidated master from The Keeper of Traken. And it was just it'd be interesting to talk to her. Of course, I also spoke with the great Tim Traylor, who will be a guest on the podcast. He is confirmed for after the new year. He voices the third Doctor and is actually going to be narrating the next audiobook, which is Planet of Evil. So it should be quite something. He's got a great voice, a great guy, just a great overall guy. Really enjoyed the fans. And, of course, had some time to spend with my good friend Lauren Cornelius, who plays Dodo Chaplet. And it was great to see her and spend some time with that folks. Also got to spend some time with Jason Haig-Ellery. He's the CEO of Big Finish. He and I connected together and has had some great conversations. He's just a wonderful guy, and we love seeing him at Chicago Tardis. The big names at Chicago Tardis, of course, had some time with Fraser Hines, of course, who sings our theme song. Just a wonderful fellow. Helped me out with a few things. Got to talk to him quite a bit. It was really nice. Also spent some one-on-one time with Wendy Padbury, and that was something because I got to talk to her and tell her about our Doctor Who podcast network, which was Direction Point, directly from the Crotons, which is one of my favorite stories. And she was just pleased that, I could quote anything from the Crotons off the top of my head. And she really was wonderful to talk to. We spent quite a bit of time at the meet and greet, mostly with her and Stephen Noonan at our table, but it was really quite nice. Also in attendance there was the Seventh Doctor himself, Sylvester McCoy. I thanked him for the message for our podcast, but he didn't remember. I know he does a lot of those things, so he said I'm glad to do it, and I don't remember it per se, but that's okay. We got him to sign a copy of the Doctor Who magazine I have, where it has him on the cover as the new Doctor from 1987. Also got to talk with Sophie Aldred. She was also in The Power of the Doctor with Sylvester, and I got a picture with her in her Ace jacket. It was really quite fun. She was really nice. Also, didn't get to talk much. I think she was a little shy, but the wonderful Sophia Miles, who played the Madame de Pompadour in the series, and she was very nice, very kind to her fans, but I think she was a little shy, and that's okay. Some of the Doctor Who actors are like that. But it was a lot of fun. I did not see many of the others, so I apologize for the extra noise. My cat, Molly, is joining me on the podcast. She's not speaking much, but wants lots of attention, as they usually do, so I'm trying to do both. Anyway, it was a great convention. My talks went very well. The first thing I did was I did a session called Introduced by Howard Da Silva, Early Doctor Who Viewing Experiences. It was well attended. And I got to show some video of the narrations and things like that. Excuse me. And it was quite nice. It was very wonderfully intended. My speaker on that was Stephen Warren Hill, who's the programming director at Chicago Tardis. He also was from my era of growing up with the series and had a lot of great things to say, including some information about the Howard Da Silva introductions that were found in Red, White, and Who, which he was an author, by the way. So that was really nice. Of course, I also I did a guided discussion, a detailed guided discussion on Tomb of the Cybermen, and brought in the VHS copy, a DVD, a Target, and a hardcover, and we gave away that Target and the hardcover to 2 lucky people, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much. We had our podcast banner up in the hallway, and it got a picture. Chicago Tardis took a picture of that and put it on their page, so thank you for that free advertising. I appreciate that a lot. On Saturday, the big day, Saturday memberships completely sold out. Completely sold out. So it was a big crowd. It was wonderful. And we did the Doctor Who Collectors Showcase, which had a full room. And even Stephen Warren Hill came in for a few minutes of that, and we showed off. And a special thank you to my assistant, Galen Jenkins, who helped me out with that. And it was quite nice to have a crowd of people that were like, wow, I've never seen that before. That was really something. Wow, never saw that up close before. And had a chance to really talk about items that are out there, and it's my new presentation for the year. So I'm hoping that more conventions will pick that up and let people see these things in my mobile museum here in the Midwest. So it's quite exciting. Plus, that was a very exciting time. My inflatable Dalek got a little attention because, unfortunately, there were no Daleks this year in Dalek Alley. It was quite disappointing, but I heard that the Dalek operators had all gotten sick. So an idea occurred to me. Maybe I should build a Dalek or get some help in building a Dalek. So if you'd like to help with that project, we would like to build a Dalek that we can take to Chicago Tardis and have everybody participate with and take pictures with. I'm not looking to make one where I can sit inside and drive it around. I just want to make a null Dalek that we can push around and have fun with. So I'm going to be starting either a crowdfunding or a Kickstarter or something like that real soon. So, a couple of dollars here and there, because it does cost a little bit to build the Dalek, and it takes a lot of time. So I know that's going to be something else. And if I can ask for anybody out there who's built a Dalek, to lend me your assistance. We did sign on to the Project Dalek Builder forum, and we got some important information there and some plans and part lists and things like that. So it would be helpful to kind of get into that, because I think there needs to be a Dalek at Chicago Tardis. I hope they come back next year for the 60th, but in case they don't, maybe I should bring one myself. But my inflatable Dalek got a lot of attention. In fact, I had to leave the collecting showcase quickly to go to my next panel, so I couldn't quite fully deflate him. So at one point, he was half deflated in the corner and got a photo with a meme, and then later somebody stuffed him into one of the panelist chairs, and he was sharing in the discussion. So it was really nice to see that. That was a lot of fun. And then Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, we spent some time in the Gaming Citadel, where I guided people through a game of War of the Daleks and the Doctor Who Monster board game from 1975, and that was very popular. It was a lot of fun to do, and nice to experience these vintage board games up close, and I hope to do that again. That was a lot of fun. So that was Chicago Tardis. It was a great time. It was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of new people, got a lot of new requests on Facebook and Instagram for followers, and picked up all my cards were taken, all my, all the people took pictures of the banner. So I welcome you all as listeners. If you're new to the podcast, thank you so much for being a part of this. That was so much fun. So keep ChicagoTardis.com in your bookmarks, and you will experience the best Doctor Who convention in the Midwest, gearing up for the 60th anniversary special at Chicago Tardis 2023. What else is going on? Well, I am pleased to announce that I am confirmed to be a guest at Consinity 2023, the Gathering of the Geeks, on Saturday, April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at Dirks Hall at the Milwaukee School of Engineering. And my special thanks to Nick Seidler for that invitation. I guess it went well last year, and he wanted me to come back, so that was great. We have proposed, haven't heard back yet, but we have proposed Doctor Who Collectors Showcase for the C2E2 convention in Chicago. That's March 31st to April 2nd. So watch this space to see if that's going to happen at all. What's new in the collection? Yes, I did pick up a few things here and there, and I'm going to reach over and grab some things here. I did stop and picked up a few books to fill the gaps here. A few new adventure titles, including First Frontier, War Child, The Sword of Forever, and Zamper. All in pretty good condition. Zamper is in used red condition, which, is pretty good. I'm still looking to fill in those gaps. I got The Pirate Planet in paperback. That's a wonderful BBC Books. I have the hardcover, so it's nice to have the paperback. I got a copy of The Nightmare Fair in Target paperback. It's in mint condition. And it's wonderful. The missing episodes, the Celestial Toymaker, so really nice stuff. So it's really good. And I decided to pick up the 3 reprints of the Muller books. These are a lot thinner, with the original artwork on the covers and things like that. I didn't have a set of these, so I thought I'd do that. But it was really nice. I got a very nice item. This was interesting. By the way of David J. Howe and Fraser Hines being my delivery man here, I think I may have mentioned on a previous podcast, I bought an unbound proof of the Target book Gunfighters with all the editor's markings, signed by Donald Cotton. That's a great find. But the seller refused to ship it to the United States, so I arranged to have it sent to David J. Howe. I said I would pay you to ship it over, and he said, I'll just do one better. I'll give it to Fraser. And of course, Fraser was so curious what was in the package. I opened it up in front of him while he was having breakfast, and I showed him what it was, and he said, wow, that's really cool. So, it was really nice to have, it's great to have friends in Doctor Who were in Doctor Who, so that was really quite something. And I will have some pictures of that available soon. I'm still going through it carefully. I want to make sure it's still in good shape and all that stuff. But the seller did tell me that it was a hardcover proof, but it's not. It's actually the Target proof, and it shows that in the markings, especially when the Target library number was wrong and a few other things that were changed. So it was very interesting. I'm going to compare it to the Gunfighters Target book and see how that goes. So it's a good find. Proofs, unbound proofs, another element of Doctor Who collecting. I will do an episode on that when I get a chance in the new year. We've got busy schedule in the new year. I also now have a plunger to go with my Berwick Dalek play suit. Found an original Berwick plunger that matches the Dalek. So now all I need is an eye stalk and a gun, and that will be a complete item. I'm looking forward to that. I just got 2 copies of Doctor Who Magazine issue 584 with David Tennant on the front, and it seems that already copies of that magazine with Jodie Whittaker on the front cover are going for thousands of dollars on eBay, because I've gotten some emails for the outrageous offer, but I'm waiting to see if I can still get it for cover price before I pursue that, because maybe they've sold out. I have no idea. We love talking to collectors, cosplayers, and anybody who participates in that area of Doctor Who. So you could share your story here. You can become a guest host. We'll turn over the microphone, or I will conduct an interview, whichever you prefer. Just email us at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. On today's show, we've got a really nice show today. I had a chance to record a live session at Chicago Tardis presented by Brian Uiga, who is an engineer and built his own sonic screwdriver, which is kind of cool. His talk was called Sonicked Up, and it's about prop collecting, which is kind of an important part of the world of Doctor Who. I don't have any props in my collection, but I have friends who do specialize in collecting props, and Brian Uiga is an expert in that. So his talk, so basically we have a little introductory talk. I met with him after the talk to kind of put some introductory remarks in, so you have a place to go. But then you're basically just going to listen to his talk at Chicago Tardis, and I want to thank Chicago Tardis, by the way, for this opportunity. And all of the visuals that he's referring to will have links on our website at drwhocollectors.com. Just go to this episode, and all those links will be posted with this episode. So you won't be left out, because I know it's hard to, when you're listening to this and go, hey, take a look at this. I can't. It's a podcast. And there's no video to go with this for Patreon. So we're just going to do this episode as it is. I want to thank, by the way, speaking of Patreon, I want to thank our patrons. Anybody who supports us on Patreon at this $15 level gets access to all of our additional media, including special videos we do just for those folks, and video copies of the interviews we do with our celebrities, such as David J. House, Sadie Miller, Lauren Cornelius, and including the ones coming down the road with Stephen Noonan, Andrew Skilleter, Tasha Achilleos. We got a lot of great people coming up. So just go to patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast for more information. You can also support us at Podbean. So you just go to drwhocollectors.podbean.com, click Become a Patron, and you can give us $1 or $10, whatever you like to help us out with. We are still finally finishing off our fundraiser for Doctor Who legend Peter Purves, who I'm pleased to say I will get booked sometime in the new year to be our guest for a 30-minute talk. He played Stephen Taylor with the First Doctor, and we're going to talk not just about merchandise from that era. We're going to talk about his career and his work on Doctor Who, and give you just that perspective from someone who was a companion in the early days of Doctor Who. And he was actually a companion with William Russell for the first for part of the chase. And of course, William Russell just turned 98. I would love to get him, but I imagine that would cost me a little bit more than what we're raising for Mr. Purves. So he'll be my highest ranking guest, so I'm really pleased to get that. So if you'd like to help us out, finish off this donation, just go to our website at drwhocollectors.com, click Donate, enter Peter Purves in the message, and you will be added to the list of sponsors. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines. And it's just a wonderful song that Mason and Reed wrote. They also wrote many other hits, including It's Not Unusual for Tom Jones. So Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page plays guitar on it, which is pretty cool. So check that out. You can hear the whole song on YouTube. It's, I believe, in the public domain these days. So I have not, I've tried to reach out to the publishers, but the publishers are not available. So I don't know who owns it now. So we haven't been copyright strike. We got no copyright strikes on YouTube for this theme song yet. So we'll wait and see. If we do, we'll reach out and see if we can work out a permissions deal. Anyway, hopefully you got to meet Fraser at Chicago Tardis. I spent a lot of time with Fraser. He's a great guy. I would call him a friend. He's a good guy. You can hear this podcast, of course, anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to it, so you already have it. But tell your friends. Amazon Music, YouTube, Audible, Podchaser, Podtail, Podbean, and many other providers have this, including Google and things like that. So we are a Direction Point Network podcast, directionpoint.org. After a quick break, where you can hear more about some of our great podcasts, we will have our collection protection main story and today's most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to
the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Are you ready to travel through time with us? Then check out Traveling the Vortex, a Doctor Who podcast. For nearly 7 years and more than 500 episodes, we've traveled from one end of the vortex to the other, making different stops with different doctors, reviewing everything from TV stories to audio plays, from books to comics, and more. Sean, Keith, and Glenn take you on a journey through 50-plus years of Doctor Who episodes and spin-off materials. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to check us out. And now, we're a proud member of Direction Point, a Doctor Who podcast network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Sad, really, isn't it? People spend all their time making nice things, and other people come along and break them.
And now it's time for Collection Protection. Collection Protection brought to you by Bags Unlimited Incorporated. For all of your media protection needs, bagsunlimited.com. Anyway, today we're actually going to be trying to protect or display, in this case, your sonic screwdriver collection and do it safely so that it doesn't fall off a shelf or roll off of a display case or anything like that. I'm not going to go with these heavy-end display cases. I think you can go that route if you choose, especially if you own a prop. You might want to get something a little sturdier. But I found for my toy sonic screwdrivers, one of the best things that you can use, and I found something to hold, especially my Spirit of Light sonic screwdriver, is a doll stand. And I may have talked about this before, but I wanted to tie this into today's episode, since today's episode's about sonic screwdriver props and sonic screwdrivers. So the sonic screwdrivers are really a lot of fun, but I can recommend a company here. It's called AliExpress, or ALI Express, altogether.com, and they sell every variety of doll stands. Now, in addition to sonic screwdrivers, you can use these to hold your action figures, your Doctor Who figurines, or your plastic mold figures, or anything that, needs to be stood up that doesn't normally stand up by itself. And it really does keep it protected. It's got a plastic base with a support knob at the top that you wrap around the top. And they're very inexpensive. I mean, for some of these, they're as low as a penny a piece up to $11.23, depending on what you're buying and what size you need. You can measure your sonic screwdriver and then get the exact thing you need there. You may also find these same stands on Amazon.com, although I found those to be a little more expensive and the same product. So they are neither company is a sponsor. So I want to just point that out. So there's a lot of different ways. Of course, if you want to go heavy duty on that, you can find some crystal cases and things like IKEA has things like that, or any collection store that deals with collection of sports memorabilia or anything like that. And you can go custom to do that. So I'm not an expert on prop collecting, but I know somebody who is. So that's how that goes. Anyway, so today's collection protection, how to display your sonic screwdrivers or your action figures or anything that needs help standing up. AliExpress.com, AliExpress.com. That's my recommendation for today. You have been listening to Collection Protection. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for the main story on the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. We're going to be catching up with Brian Uiga at Chicago Tardis. We recorded his Sonicked Up panel live. And just to kind of introduce you to what you're about to hear, I'm here with Brian Uiga. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Larry. I've been enjoying your deep dives into the dusty corners of fandom, and you know, it's delightful getting lost in the weeds of all the little variations of bits and pieces, because I do that with the sonic screwdriver props, like with the kind of group of nerds that I run with. We're trying to help, like Nick Robatto and various things like that, to try and get all the details exactly right. And Brian Terranova, whose collection of ebooks I use extensively in the panel, he's a madman. He's he can track which pieces on which sonic screwdriver go here or there based on the location of the set screws, and knowing what order stories were filmed in, so you can track damage based on filming order and things like that. And so it's a delight. It's a delight getting lost in the weeds, just as long as you don't actually get lost.
Right. No, and it's a lot of fun to do, and thank you so much for your kind words. I know a lot of collectors want to get into the world of prop collecting, and that's something you're going to hear in this live recording that's coming up. Any initial introductory thoughts here on this area in prop collecting and looking what to look for?
Yeah, I mean, so my background is that the sonic, I think I mentioned this in the panel, just very, very truncated, is that I became an engineer because of the sonic screwdriver. Because in the 90s, I could get any kind of Star Trek toy I wanted, and then I saw this amazing steampunk romantic film with Paul McGann that was exciting, and it was weird, and it was British, and then I immediately went out and I wanted to get Doctor Who toys. I wanted a sonic screwdriver, and there weren't any available, so I had to learn how to build things to make my own. And then I started getting more and more sophisticated. I got the technical manual. I ended up building a complete TARDIS toolkit out of just junk. But granted, that's what they made the original out of.
Right.
And that kind of that sort of foundation was right when I was finishing up high school, And at the end of high school, I'd been doing community theater, and I kind of rolled that all together in a unlicensed episode of Mystery Science Theater that I created with a bunch of the theater kids. So we turned my garage into the Satellite of Love.
Oh, that's great.
And I built all the puppets and things. And then I went off to school and I became an engineer. And now that sort of interest in the theatrical and fiction combined with the engineering is now my career, which is... we design motion picture film scanners, these sort of very sophisticated optic/robotic systems that deal with sort of priceless original copies of film they're literally decomposing. I mean, some of these are so volatile they have to be stored in nitrogen environments, like if you're welding, and it's delightful because these machines are used to preserve and save the master copy of amazing movies like the first science fiction film ever made by Georges Méliès. And we were building one thing, and the customer completely freaked me out by bringing the Kubrick's original hand-cut negative of 2001: A Space Odyssey to try the machine out, and it was brand new. I'm like, don't you have anything cheaper?
Yeah.
But, I bit my tongue, and they liked it, and so now, anything... A lot of things that you'll see digitally on iTunes or things like that have been upscaled are on my machines. And that's a great feather in my cap. I wanted to go into special effects, but now I'm really happy kind of preserving the history of film. And, not just movies, but things like newsreels.
Sure.
And there's a lot of impetus to save historical photographs, but not a lot of impetus to save historical newsreels. And it's the same thing. You really can't tell where you've been unless you actually save the photographs. You can even the terrible stuff, even the horrendously racist past that we have in film. If you can't save it, you're whitewashing over it, and you're doomed to repeat the mistakes. So the sonic screwdriver, this sort of magic wand, multi-tool that could do anything, turned into engineering, which is also in its own way this sort of magical multi-tool that can create anything and do anything. And it's I'm just delighted to be a real-life Swiss Army knife, sonic screwdriver, what have you.
And that's great. So, my listeners, what you're about to hear is a pre-recorded presentation by Brian Uiga. All of the things he's going to refer to visually, we will try to have as many links in the description of this podcast as possible so that you can follow along, including any publications he refers to. So I ask you to just stay tuned and enjoy the presentation.
It's a wild one. Welcome to I Am Sonic Up, the history of Doctor Who props. My name is Brian. I'm a collector, and I actually have a real interesting story with the sonic screwdriver in that in the 90s, after the TV movie came out, I had been able to get all of these amazing Star Trek toys at every Target, every toy store, where I could get phasers and communicators and tricorders. But then I saw this amazing movie that I loved the whole non-violent aspect of the hero. I loved how British it was. I loved the designs of everything, which was this sort of steampunk amazement before steampunk even existed. And I couldn't find any toys. None of them. So I started making my own. And that started me tinkering on things, and then I got into the puppets from Mystery Science Theater, and we used that to make fun of some Doctor Who that deserved it, Time in the Ronnie. And that has that little through line has traveled throughout my entire career. And now I'm the head of engineering at a robotics company that designs motion picture film scanners that are used to save every vintage movie that you've probably ever seen. They're used all over the world. So like Warner Brothers, everything that Warner Brothers has put up that was before 2000, so all the Batman movies, all the really fun stuff, that's two guys in one of our scanners saving those prints and making them available for streaming. And, a couple other feathers in my cap. 2001: A Space Odyssey was restored on one of our scanners. The world's first science fiction movie, An Earth to the Moon, in 1899 was done on one of our scanners. So it all comes back to this amazing fictional device that originally was a throwaway plot gag in Fury from the Deep to tie into something 6 episodes later, or 5. And so this is a quote from Stephen Moffat that really struck with me, and one of the reasons why I just love these tools so much, which is the Doctor's a different kind of hero. They didn't give him a gun. They gave him a screwdriver to fix things. And they didn't give him a tank or a warship or an X-Wing fighter. They gave him a call box where people could call for help. And then they didn't give him a superpower like a freeze ray or pointy ears, but they gave him 2 hearts. And so the sonic screwdriver to me is a huge part of why the show is so wholesome and so British and such kind of silly sci-fi, because the sonic screwdriver doesn't work at all. It's a flashlight, just like all of your toys. It's always been a flashlight, except for a bit in the 70s when they used a couple of props they stole from Jerry Anderson. We'll get through that. So I wanted to walk these things around because I'm going to be talking about props a lot, and there's sort of two different variations of props that they use on set. So there are the hero ones, which are used for all of the close-up shots, and then look nice, and they get photographed when they're making all the toys and things like that. And then there are the stunt props, which are either something that's just used in the background, or it's something that's made out of foam rubber that's in a fight scene. So they're going to fight with a book, but they don't want to damage the people who are fighting, and so they make a foam rubber book. So I wanted to show you. I brought 2 actual props used on Doctor Who. Joe, do you think you could help me out with something real quick? I want to give you one of these props and have you wander around and show everybody so they can kind of see the difference. Ross, are you game?
Sure.
Okay. So Joe has the stunt prop. So this is a stunt background version of one of the communicators that's used in the first episode that Matt Smith filmed, which is The Time of Angels, where he screams at Angel Bob. And Ross is going to be walking around with a very iconic hero prop, which is the actual sonic screwdriver that was used from season 1 through 3 of the show. Not all of it's original. I'll get into that. So with this communicator, there are hero light-up ones that Matt Smith wore, and the one that I've got is one that they just clipped on one of the background actors, and so that kind of gives you a range of how props kind of work. So when we're talking about how many of these props they had or anything like that. Now, the sonic screwdriver inspired me to restore film and save movies from obscurity and decomposing into plastic explosive, because that's what the early film stock is actually made out of. It's just sweating plastic explosives, terrible stuff. But what's very cool is a few years ago at the Bristol University, a couple of crazy British kids actually made a working sonic screwdriver. And I just wanted to show you. It's not quite what you see on screen. This is just a very quick video. So
I feel like one of those women from The Price is Right.
Yeah. So what they did is they came up with this sort of gauntlet that can lift small objects. So every one of these little. Oh, you want to just drop it on the table? Thank you. every one of these little round things that he strapped to his hand is essentially a sonic cage. It's like a laser beam that sends out a very fine, very directed sound wave. And because you've got an array like this, it effectively becomes a cage. So what it can do is it can take a very lightweight object like this little dot you're seeing right there, and it can levitate it. And it's like, okay. So this is actually something that's very useful because it's very similar to like those toys where you see where like a TARDIS is held between two magnets and you can spin it. But there are a lot of very dangerous materials that you can't use magnetic fields on. So like uranium or various other types of waste or things, very exotic materials that you would, say, create in a particle accelerator. And you can't touch these, and you can't manipulate them by normal means. And so what they've done is they've created a gauntlet that you can grab. You can hold the little devices with a cage of sound waves and move them around. Now, here it is. Here's the sonic screwdriver, although I would call it a sonic cone. So what it is, it's a bowl-shaped device with all of these little sonic laser beams, and it creates a cage that will hold the device. But because it's a bowl and it's in a round shape, they could do something really amazing, which is they can set it, and you can push a button, and it's rotating in one direction, and then you can pulse it in another direction, and it'll rotate in the other direction. And so, as of 2016, a sonic screwdriver actually exists. Granted, it's made out of tinfoil, but you can actually pick up devices, very light things that are dangerous, and you can spin them using sonic beams, which I think is very cool. So that's the real sonic screwdriver. So you can see just a still from the photo. So the way this thing worked is you have this sort of bowl shape of all these little sonic laser beams that are holding it up, and they're pulsing, and they're just holding the thing in place. And like an electric motor, if you take that pulsing force and you rotate it, what it will effectively do is it will do little micro pushes of whatever the device, whatever you're holding, and it'll move it in either direction. So that's a real sonic screwdriver. That's a lot of really, really intense tech. And now I'm going to tell you about how cheap the BBC was. So because I was told that this panel was going on while I was at the airport, I'm relying a lot on my friend Brian Terranova's ebook that's available at this site, Kasterborous. He's done one about the classic series sonic screwdriver and one about the Tennant era sonic screwdriver, which we're going to be going through. And then there's some very fun little details from the person who actually built them, which is Nick Robatto at Robatto Props for the 11s, the 12s, and the 13s. Brian, just to give him a little bit of background, Brian is a part of a little team of extreme sonic nerds like myself who have been doing a lot of the research on these vintage props to help Nick make the most accurate copies ever made. And so we've been tracking all kinds of sonic nonsense, and now we're very invested in these little flashlights. So you guys ready? This is from a missing episode. This is the first sonic screwdriver ever made. It only exists in telesnaps. It only exists in telesnaps, but it was this little object they held on top of this bolt, and the bolt came up. And that was just a throwaway script gag. because the villain of this, 5 episodes later, is this seaweed monster that they find can be scared away by sound waves. And so there's this little throwaway scene at the very beginning of the show where Patrick Troughton says, "Oh yeah, I know about sound waves. Here's a sonic screwdriver. Look at what it can do." And then 5 episodes later, he rigs together a very large sonic device that takes the seaweed monster and chases it away. And originally, at least according to the scriptwriter, it was going to be a pen light, like this, just a 1960s pen light. And then they dropped it in the box. So what they did is they yanked something off of Victoria's life vest. And I'm pleased to show you the world's first sonic screwdriver. It's a life vest whistle. And so you can actually see here in this shot, Patrick Troughton is about to christen the most famous fictional tool in history, and it's a life whistle. But then, they got the prop back together, and they used a pen light again, which we're not sure because nobody ever saw the pen light that they dropped in there. It's probably really similar to the one they used later, but who knows? So after that, you had a pen light. It was used in one intermediate story as sort of a hollow tube that had a firework in it so he could cut a hole in a wall. But then in the war games, he uses this style of pen light. This is actually a modern replica because the originals, now that it's been found out what it is, they go for hundreds, thousands of dollars. Ridiculous. But they used this type of pen light that you could get at any corner drugstore. And he showed in the war games that he was from an advanced civilization by taking a screw out of a gun, just like before. So all the sonic screwdriver was something that they would do an insert shot, and a bolt would move up and a bolt would move down. Then we get to the 70s. Now, can I see your sonic screwdriver, Larry? Thanks. So we have this very iconic prop, and how many people in here have one of these? Congratulations! That's 7 times as many as they had on the show. There's only one. Just like they only had one pen light and then they dropped it in there, so they used the whistle. They only ever had one of these, and they didn't even make it. So in the 70s, the early 70s, when the Gary Anderson puppet animation shows were kind of ramping down, the Doctor Who production office bought all of their stuff. And so, like, a lot of the Tom Baker era spaceships that you see are Jerry Anderson models that they've, like, hacked in half and, like, glued back together haphazardly. And the special effects guys at the time just wondered why they didn't keep the old ones, because they look so much better. So the sonic screwdriver was 2 props. One, there was a saboteur who had this sort of futuristic handle that you would use for sabotage. And so he was nefarious, you can tell because he's got black gloves. And he was nefariously disconnecting wires in Thunderbirds or Go. And then the top was a microphone for a puppet from Captain Scarlet and the Mysterions. And then they wanted to use a sonic screwdriver again because they wanted to be able to open a door without a lock-picking sequence. So they made the first sonic screwdriver. And I believe the first time that it actually went out was the Sea Devils, where they took the original sort of spirally paint on it and they added a whole bunch of other colors so it was nice and bright and 70s and had that kind of aesthetic. But they actually just used the handle a couple episodes earlier in filming time in Colony in Space, where it's used as a futuristic handcuff lock. And if you've ever been wondering what this slot is for on the side, whether it's some sort of futuristic thing, it's because either the Doctor Who production office or somebody else put a belt clip on the saboteur handle, and then Doctor Who took it off. And that's it. For from 1973 to 1980, one prop. In season 10, they took all the guff off and they screwed a magnet to the back. And I've talked to Matt Irvine, who's the one that he's in charge of the canine props, and he's the one who screwed the magnet onto the back, and that's his claim to fame with the sonic screwdriver. But if you watch show by show in filming order, you can just see the thing get beat up more and more, and every single piece of damage just continues. And the funny thing is, if you watch for it in the classic series, the head never quite stayed on. So there are lots and lots of episodes. Like Tom Baker's first one, it fell off in his pocket. Then he had to put it back on. Then, in things like Genesis of the Daleks or the Hand of Fear, it's hanging out on the little wire that was on the original microphone. And that's it. Technically, they had two, because they blew up one that looked like it had been made out of cardboard. And that sonic screwdriver, they wrote it out because classic Doctor Who has a very long pace, and they'd run out of stuff to do if they didn't have to have lock-picking sequences. So they wrote it out. Mm-hmm. And apparently it was stolen from John Nathan Turner's desk. So out there is the original sonic screwdriver, but it's well known that it's been stolen. So it's going to be like some of those Picassos where you'll never see it again, or the Aston Martin from Goldfinger. For the TV movie, what the guys did is they're like, well, okay, Doctor Who has a sonic screwdriver. So they made one, and then they decided they wanted it to collapse down to fit in a pocket. So they made one. It went to, and this is the exact piece that inspired me to become an engineer, because I built one of these out of PVC pipe and the closing pieces of a spring-loaded toilet paper center roll, so that I would let it go and it'd pop up. It's the coolest thing ever. I wish I kept it. And so they only had one, and it went up to auction, and I was willing to hawk my car for it, but somebody wanted it just a little bit more than I did. So I ended up with the next best thing, which was the next one they used on screen. So now we're going to get into the... anybody have any questions about the classic Sonics or BBC cheapness yet before I dive into the really bougie, high-powered BBC series, the new one started by Russell T Davies, where they had two. They had two sonic screwdrivers. One of them, originally they had two. They were built by a company called Aztec Models, and they were held together with super glue and really, really difficult to deal with. But one of them, you could pull the head out, and that's the one that I kept the middle of. And then there was, and just so, this is about prop collecting. So how do I know that this is the original one when I was given the body? Because they never repainted it. The BBC was so cheap, they never repainted it. So if you look, every single crack in it matches the original publicity photo of the thing from 2004. And every one of the modern scratches just lines up with this close-up from Human Nature, where the prop had seen better days. You can actually tell the head's on crooked. It's being held on by hot glue. And so right after that, they finally built some more. But I'm going to get into the other one. So mine was sort of the hero prop for quite a few of the series, but you couldn't. You had to cut the camera and then pull the head out. So do the extending action that later on you were just able to do with your thumb. So it was more fun for the actor. So they had another one of these static props. As far as we can tell, the head didn't even come out. It was just like the solid one. And it was called the Cream Aztec because instead of kind of a grayish paint, it had kind of a cream paint. They were kind of working out what the finishes were going to be on the TARDIS console that they were matching, and these two kind of came out different. And so they only used this in the first filming block, and it shows up half dozen times on screen. Then they took it, and you can see there's this micro switch, and they're like, well, we need to make the micro switch move up and down. So they cut a giant ugly channel in it so that they could move the micro switch up and down. But then this prop you could only use from one side because if it was pointing in the wrong way, you just see this big ugly channel that they didn't want to see. So that was in series 1 and 2, while my prop, the gray Aztec prop, was being used as sort of the hero close-up prop whenever you needed to see the whole body. This one was sort of the close-up prop that the actor could turn the light on and then extend at the same time. And they're like, well, that's pretty ugly. So in season 3, when they were starting to revamp the props, they took the same body, the same heads, the same electronics, the same everything. They filled in this giant channel with putty. They cut a tiny slider on the other side, and they made kind of the prototype for what we consider the modern David Tennant Sonic. And then they took my body and discarded it and used the end caps. They used the end caps on this guy, the second one that was the cream one, and then they cut it and put 2 different sliders in it. They used that on one of the new props they made in season 4, and then mine, they took it off and they put it on the one that David Tennant kept. So we matched up by where all these little characteristic nicks were, that it's the one from my props. So these end caps are fakes, and they always will be because David Tennant's never going to give up the bits of his Sonic. So there were 2. They used them for filming in Series 4. One of them they made look real nice, and that's the one that David Tennant kept. And if any of you have the Wand Company TV remotes, that's the Sonic, the 10th Doctor Sonic screwdriver. It's actually scanned from the original prop, even to the point where they couldn't figure out how to do the paint. So what they did is they molded a piece of plastic that has every single crack matching David Tennant's Sonic, which is super fun. So if you have one of those, it's really close to an original prop. The other one, when they were finishing up, they made a nice one for David Tennant. The other one they covered in goo for the 11th hour, and it completely fell apart. And that's what it's like today. And it's owned by a private collector who doesn't want anybody to know he has it. Which, more power to him. That's it. So what we had, Doctor Who, this big budget new thing. They had 2 Sonics. They had this one that they changed a whole bunch of times. They had mine, which they didn't. Then they took the end bits off of it, and they made 2 Tennant props, these 2, the one that David kept and then the one that they gooped up. And then they only had one left. So for the 50th anniversary special, they took a prop replica that had been made by a company by MFX, and they used 4 of those because David ended up breaking 2 of them, and he didn't want to break his original one. So that's the Tennant Sonic, and basically everybody agrees that sort of the season 4 revamp where it's got the little slot and you can move it up and down with your finger is sort of the iconic one. So that's sort of what all the toys are based on. Then you get to the 11th Doctor Sonic screwdriver. You had a new producer. You had a new, larger budget, so they made 4 of them. 4.
So how much did 4 of those cost?
So the question for the podcast people is how much did 4 of those cost? And basically, Nick Robatto,
who did the revamp of the Tennant Sonic for Series 4, which is why it looked a lot better. And then he's made from scratch every single Sonic that's been on the show since the revamp. Since the Masters Laser. So he built the 11s, he built the 12s, he built the 13s, and I don't have exact. I don't have it confirmed yet, but I have it on very good authority that he made the 14th Doctor Tennant 3.5 new sonic screwdriver. And so I don't know what what he actually charged the studio for, but the first one, which is this guy up here, he made by hand. They gave him a week to make that. They had the concept art, and the whole idea is that this thing would extend a lot further. You would flick it out. You'd flick the cage out with your thumb. You'd toss it back in your hand. You'd pop the cap open, and you'd use it like a CSI mag light, where they're looking around everywhere. And so the original Sonic looked like this. Which, by the way, I'm not going to go into too much detail because Nick Robatto's site, Robatto Replicas. Go on. There you go. Robatto Replicas has a great potted history of this, including all of the behind the scenes shots and everything like that. So it originally looked like this, where it came out a lot longer, and you flipped up the cap on the back, and that's why all the toys have a red button on the back, which you never use, and was never used on the show except for in one shot. So Matt Smith was given this beautiful new prop, and he was looking at it, and the first thing he did is break it into two pieces. Which, wasn't great for Nick, because he'd spent basically no sleep for a week building the thing. And what he said, the standby props guy said to him, mock crying, it's like, we're going to break so many of these things. And so that was when he was doing it CSI Mag style. But then when he was playing with it, what Matt Smith decided is he really liked West Side Story, where there's all the dancing and the snapping, and the Jets and the Sharks would fling out their switchblades and go Jets, Sharks, Jets, Sharks. And so Nick had to completely rebuild these things. So instead of it being like a mag light, it could stand to be tossed like this, and abused. And so there's a convention story where it has been told that Matt Smith basically broke one of these on set almost every day of filming. And so at one point they had screwed some shut, and so all of that. But do any of you have a toy of this? It's completely screen accurate to a couple of scenes where they, whenever they needed to throw the Sonic around, they used the toy. They painted it a little bit, and they did a little bit of filler putty. So by the time Matt Smith was done, they had cut one of the original four Sonics up to make a Sonic cane, and then there'd been some that are broken, and then Matt Smith got one that was nice, and there was one surviving. And it's that one, the one in the middle that still has the cap on the end. But Peter Capaldi, they needed more Sonics. So at this point, Nick Robatto was just starting up his replica company, and he finally got the okay from the BBC to make exact copies of the Sonic screwdrivers. So he improved the design a little bit. He took the back off, and he made 3 more for the production, and then he made some replicas at the same time. So if you were lucky enough to get one of like the first, I don't know how many, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 50, he never told me, of the first Sonics, they're literally from the same parts bin as Capaldi's Sonics. Wow. So I'm very happy with this one that's got a low number. It's a great design. It takes a lot of abuse. There's a little Easter egg. You guys notice this green little bulb on the end?
Yeah.
Remember that. It comes in handy later. So then Nick Robatto started making the others, and he had his replica business up and running, and things were pretty easy. So like he made the 12. And again, on his website, he's got a great kind of history showing the concept art and everything that he made. And he made the first one by hand. Then he made a bunch for the production and made some replicas at the same time. So if you're lucky enough to get some of the early ones, there you go. Same parts bin. And he worked really closely with character options on this. So, I said, if you've got an 11 Sonic, you're real lucky. It's what was used on screen. If you got a 12 Sonic, you're also lucky because they use stunt ones on screen. So there's like one in Oxygen that a robot guy crushes. That was one of the toys. There was one that he pops in half and uses as a pen in World Enough and Time. I believe that's the name of it. The one with the creepy Cyberman with flesh hands. That's a toy, and the toys are remarkably accurate, like exceptionally accurate, because when he made a whole bunch for the production, he also made one without all the paint and the finishes on it to the toy company, and they scanned it, and that's what they made the toy out of. So if you hold this next to a toy, it's really close. There's a difference in a couple of rivets and things, and this sort of claw-y business, it doesn't open up, it's molded as one piece, but it's dead on. Everything else is the same.
Did it open up on the show?
No, they never ended up opening up the little claw things on the side. Nick also did a really cool thing where on the back there was a screw hole. You see how it's got this sort of square cage section on the top?
Yeah.
On the back there's one screw, and it pulls off, and then there's just a little pipe on it and the lights. And the idea is that the production wanted to be able to have different attachments on it. And they never ended up using it. But, it's an iconic prop. It's, if it had been used more than like one season and some specials, it probably would have had all that those cool stuff.
Yeah. I wish they would make more 10 ones, really.
Yeah.
I had to go on Etsy to get a special one last year.
Oh, okay.
It's a hybrid of the 4th Doctor one, the 10th Doctor one.
Oh, yeah. There's tons of customs and stuff. If you want to get like super crispy, accurate ones, Nick Robatto, having built the first set, he's the one. Anytime he opens up a run for his, they are dead on. I have it on good authority that somebody had some very good reference to make an earlier version of one by a company called Little Shop Props, who I sent full measurements of my original prop, and they've made. They're making copies of the original 2 sonic screwdrivers that were used in seasons 1 through 3. So the one with the ugly channel and mine.
Okay, because my one is getting up there now.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get the remote control, like I said, it's so dead on to the to Tenet Sonic, it's pretty good.
I just can't risk it, though, because the batteries might not work.
Yeah. I mean, the Wand Company is super cool about telling you how to replace them, but it is something that you need a soldering iron and a little bit of patience. So I'm just going to get on to the new sonic screwdriver, the Jodie one. Which again Nick built completely from scratch, and it's really an amazing piece of engineering because he managed to get a motor so the end could spin, and a ton of LEDs, and make it all fit in this amazing sort of hand sculpted organic piece of pewter. Now, if you're wondering how Nick, made them worked with them to decide what finish this Sonic could be, he had the concept art, and he brought them a ray gun that he had made before he had the sonic screwdriver license from the BBC. He made a whole bunch of really cool ray guns and wrist devices, one of which ended up on the show with Capaldi. And with this ray gun, he very cheekily reused the bulbs from the 11th Doctor Sonic to be part of this giant light up amazing actuator. But then that was the sort of proof of concept, and that's how the 13th Doctor Sonic Screwdriver is cast out of pewter. And so this is just one last little behind-the-scenes bit of him building the Sonic things. So he sculpted this thing out of just basically putty, and then that Sheffield steel mark that's in the back, he etched it with a laser, and then cast the whole thing in pewter, so it looks like one of those spoons that has the thing in it. So now I'm just going to talk real briefly about screen use props, because I've got a few, and how can you avoid getting ripped off. And so if you see it on eBay, it's fake. If it's available for less money than what would be considered way too much money, it's fake. So this is one of my pieces. Like I mentioned, this communicator here is the Angel Bob communicators, the stunt one. This is one of the Hero light up ones that I got it from a reputable collector, which I don't know if his name he wants to be known, so I'm not going to say who it is. But so I got it from him, so I was pretty sure. But then they all have different weathering styles, and I was able to match it exactly to the scene where Matt Smith screams at Angel Bob and says the iconic line, "We have comfy chairs." And so that's a pretty good way to say, okay, I'm pretty sure that that's actually a prop. Also, the internal construction of it is way too much work if somebody was going to try and make a fake. I also have been involved with restoring the TARDIS console, the one from the McGann TV movie, and Phil Siegel had the original TARDIS toolkit and gifted it to us, and it included a pre-production sonic screwdriver that, as far as we can tell, was never actually used on screen, but it's a prop that was available from a place called 800 Trekker that they weathered up and painted. They used the 800 Trekker TARDIS keys too. Yep.
Yes.
And so they did a really crummy paint job on the bullet and everything. And I have a bombshell for you, because that's the other screen use Sonic in my collection. No, I'm lying. Because I've seen the original, I was able to make one where every single mark, every single scratch, every single paint splatter is exactly the same as the original. So screen matching is not necessarily the smoking gun, but it's a really good start. But here's one of my other pieces, and I got this from Matthew Doe at the Reliquary. So right now he's doing a lot of what he does is he works with people like Mike Tucker that are restoring really interesting props, especially ones with foam rubber. And when bits fall up, he cuts them up and he makes little displays so that you can have a little tiny thing to throw on your shelf, a paperweight. And I got from him these two pawns from my favorite Doctor Who story of all time, The Curse of Fenric. And I was really jazzed to get the pawns because half of the chess set went up in flames, as you might remember, and there weren't very many left, but I wanted one of each of the pawns so that they could work together. So this is the Reliquary. And if you're wondering, why would I trust Matt Doe, is because he's been thanked and mentioned by Mike Tucker in a few different places, so you know that he at least knows Mike Tucker. Or if you have the Target storybook, Mike Tucker wrote a story in this, and the first sentence is, "Private Matt Doe stared into the thick November fog," and so he put his friend in the book and then kills him violently, because that's what friends do. There's one other place that you can that I know you can trust, and there's this eBay site called Collectors Props Wales, which basically took all of the stuff that was discarded when the Doctor Who studio moved from Rothlock to the new RTD location. And so they have a whole bunch of pieces. Some of them are iconic, some of them aren't. But as you can see, the prices are like, oh wow, that's way too much money, which means that it's an actual prop. So, like for example, here we've got for £200 you can get one of the emoji discs that was stuck onto people's backs from Smile, and next to it you can get one of the lights that was from the Dalek spaceship in Revolution of the Daleks. Which I bought one of these because it turns out they reuse these, and it's exactly what my favorite companion, Ace, blew up in the Centenary Special. She strapped her new Nitro 9 to a couple of these, so I just had to get one. So that's a potted history of props. And the story is fictional devices are magic. The BBC is very cheap. Scientists have made amazing things based on the sonic screwdriver anyway. And if you want to get Doctor Who props, don't get ripped off.
A big thank you to my guest, Brian Uiga here, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, main story for props and the history of the sonic screwdriver. So I thank you for being here. And we're live at Chicago Tardis, so thank you all for being here. And I know Brian will be around if you have specific one-on-one questions that you want to
I'm happy. You could see, I could talk about this stuff for hours, and I hope it wasn't too dry, but it was the stuff that I find really interesting.
I found it riveting, actually.
Yeah.
Very,
and I'll be around. I'll always have the Screen Use Sonic on me, so if you see me, feel free to just ask nicely for a selfie. Wash your hands first, please.
We have hand sanitizer.
And it'll be good. Now, does anybody have any questions about sonic screwdrivers or Doctor Who props? We've got a couple minutes before a panel comes in that you really should hang out for, because we had an amazing queer panel about gender in Doctor Who in here before, and then we're going to have an amazing panel afterwards, a roundtable discussion about LGBT representation in Doctor Who and how much it means to so many people. And the producer of the documentary that I'm in, where the story of why I was inspired by the sonic screwdriver to do all this stuff with film restoration, is one of the stories in this show called Indoctrinated, which we're having a preview tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the main ballroom.
So much fun, and you can hear him talk even more than you have today.
Yeah, but not as dry. They edited me. And so I talk about how amazing it is to have these fictional devices that inspire everything I do technically, and how amazing it is. And then we have a scientist, Sarah Roberts, who's talking about how the companions in Doctor Who, these amazing scientists that went on these amazing adventures, how much good they could do. And now she's a climate scientist, finding safe groundwater in the desert, Lawrence of Arabia, Mad Max, finding the survival of the human race, which makes me feel a little small in comparison. And then we have Lee Hurtado, who has sadly passed away, but Doctor Who was a very large part of the comfort that he had at the end of his life. And then he also took Doctor Who and his passion about Doctor Who and was instrumental in a theme park that is fully wheelchair accessible, so wheelchair kids could get on every single ride. And I just think that's the coolest thing ever. So I've got a time for maybe 2 deep dive nerd questions if anybody wants to know any more about Sonics. Yes?
Do you know if anyone has made a replica of the Sonic Trawl for the song?
Yes.
Okay, I actually was commissioned to make one once, and apparently when it was shown to Alex Kingston, she did not want to give it back to the person I made it for, because I integrated sound and lights into it.
Oh, yes.
From one of your build your own Sonics.
Yeah.
She said she's never seen one other than the prop that was used.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. There was only one Sonic Trowel. You know, the BBC super high budget show. They have this new amazing thing that they're probably going to make 1 billion toys out of, the Sonic Trowel, and they made one. They had this amazing new prop that was a Sonic cane, and they made one. They had this amazing new laser screwdriver, and they made thousands of toys, and they had one. So that's the story of the BBC in a nutshell. Anybody else before I quiet myself?
So yes, you will get ripped off on eBay. Many years ago, I bought what I think said a screen-used cider head.
There are so many fake eBay sales out there. I mean, if you want to learn all about that, go back about 5 or 6 episodes of the Doctor Who Collectors podcast, and I unveil the fraud, the rip-off artists, and the price gougers. And some people are nodding their heads because they've heard the episode.
Well, that was from Li Who, right? That was that panel.
There was a panel at Li Who, but I did a special episode on fraudsters out there. So it was quite it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And don't feel bad if you're duped. You just because. Ross was telling me a story about how they're trying to create remember the Alamo Museum in the actual town of the Alamo, and the musician Phil Collins is one of the biggest Alamo collectors in existence, and he has this huge collection that's going to be part of this museum, and people have been selling him a lot of bum stuff. So when they started putting together the exhibit, they're like, oh. These aren't real. Anyway, thank you all so much. Please hang out for the LGBT representation panel. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be very emotional. It's very important to very many people. And I hope you learned a little something about flashlights that buzz and BBC cheapness. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were invited on an adventure across all of time and space. In a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson, Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse. On shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Keep collecting.
All my travelings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. This is a very popular part of our program where I talk about basically a Doctor Who item or Doctor Who related item that appears to be priced way out of the range of where it should be compared to where else you can get it for. And so we like to point this out to people, not only to educate collectors on what to look for when you're buying things and how to avoid spending more money than you have to, but also to inform sellers that you shouldn't be placing these prices as high as you do. The market just doesn't demand it, and especially if no one is buying it. So today I want to talk about a seller here. This is an eBay sale. And this is the seller's name is AUDBURN or Oddburn with 1,298 score there, 100% positive feedback, so no issues there. This is from the UK. And the item in question is the Doctor Who Evil of the Daleks Limited 4 Vinyl Scarrow Swirl LP box set. I have 2 of these in my collection. It looks like shipping is $80.76 to the United States, or £68.83. So that's that. So they're asking for a buy it now price of 920 pounds 27, approximately $1,079.75 in American dollars. So I'm just going to point out that this seems a bit outrageous to me, considering it is most likely a little under 10 times the actual value or price for this particular vinyl album. I do remember buying this new from Amazon, and I have one that's still in the manufacturer's packaging and one that's open. So I wanted to let you know that you can still get this product here. We did some research here and found on Amazon.com. So Amazon US and UK, Doctor Who, the same product here. This is Evil of the Daleks, BBC TV soundtrack, deluxe edition, color vinyl box set, same exact thing. And by the way, the price here, let's see, shipping, doesn't have a shipping price on here per se, but the price new is $116.96. Which is about what it's about worth. I would agree with that. Ships within 3 to 4 days on Amazon. This is Amazon.com. So it's sold from a shop in the UK. So, and it includes free shipping. Oh, free shipping. Yeah, there you go. Free shipping. So $116.96 for free shipping. So there you go. And by the way, just so you know, you can also get the Daleks Master Plan original vinyl for $125 on Amazon. So there's no reason to pay $1,000 for this set. Just not worth it. And do your research. We always say, it's always let the buyer beware, but make sure that you're thoroughly investigating what you're looking for. If you're looking to collect this particular item or you want to listen to it, it's a wonderful thing to listen to as well. Warm vinyl sound. I think it's amazing. Don't spend too much money for it. Look to see if you can still get it new. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, these vinyl records that have come out in the last few years are still in stock in some places. I would check Amazon. I would check Alien Entertainment. I would check Who North America or the Who Shop UK. Those are my 3 go-to places before I go to the auction sites. And of course, even just searching eBay, I found it for a lot less, although the lowest price is on Amazon new. So I would go there and buy it new. So there you go. That's the outrageous offer. The links will be on our website. I don't know if the sale will still be there. A lot of times after we do this, people start bothering the seller, and the seller either takes the auction down or lowers the price. But I do have a printout and a screenshot of the actual auction in case you doubt my words. So there you go. That concludes our most outrageous offer. If you see an item, a Doctor Who item, Doctor Who related item, or something related to the show, and you think the price is just a little crazy, and I mean really crazy, some items are more money. If you're talking about a prop, you might be spending a little bit more, or a one-of-a-kind item. That might be a little bit more money and hard to pinpoint another source. But if you think you can still get it cheaper, we'll do the research for you. No problem. If you want to be mentioned on the air, we'll do that too. The person that sent this here asked to be anonymous, so we're going to respect that. And that's, I get a lot of these. And so I'll probably be stacking a few of these in future episodes, doing a few of them, just to kind of keep the education going. But anyway, that's what we do here. We try to entertain and educate at the same time. But that's the most outrageous offer, and that wraps up the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast for episode 57. I want to thank my guest, Brian Uiga. I really enjoyed having a one-on-one talk with him and recording his session at Chicago Tardis. I also want to thank everybody who said hello to me at Chicago Tardis and the people that have extended their well wishes on various social media platforms or through email. So we thank you for that. What's coming up on the podcast? The next episode will be our Christmas episode, sponsored by Amazon.com. It's the only episode ever sponsored by Amazon. It's the gift guide to Doctor Who items for the casual fan. And again, for the casual fan, if you're buying for a collector, and I'll say this again in the next episode, ask them first. So thank you so much for listening, and until then, keep collecting.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.